Good evening. Thank you everybody for joining us. Welcome. My name is Fasika Alam. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am with the United African Organization. Welcome to Eyes on ICE, Truth and Accountability Forum with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights in partnership with Mi Gente. Please share your names, preferred pronouns, and why you decided to join the call in the chat, please. Also, we are recording this session and only panelists will be on camera. We encourage you to participate and ask questions and put comments in the chat. Yes, next we have interpretation explanation, correct.
Hi, I'm going to explain a little bit the language justice best practices to share with the speakers. Please speak at a slow and steady pace. Please speak loudly and clear. And please try to say the full name of acronyms, for example, an organization's title. Please keep an eye on the chat in case we send you a message to slow down or speak up. Keep your microphone on mute when you're not speaking. I'm going to say it en español ahora. Ayúdanos a crear un espacio multilingüe entre todos. Por favor, habla a un paso lento y constante. Habla en voz alta y clara. Intente decir el nombre completo de los acrónimos, por ejemplo, el título de una organización. Échele un ojo al chat por si enviamos un mensaje pidiendo que hable más lento o más alto. Mantén tu micrófono en silencio si no estás hablando y si tienes audífonos con micrófono, por favor utilízalo. Una persona a la vez, los intérpretes solo pueden interpretar una voz a la vez y no queremos estar en una posición de tener que decir cuál voz es privilegiada sobre otra.
Thank you. So our program tonight includes hearing from community leaders with powerful testimonies. We have Ozzy and Daniel with us tonight. It also includes hearing from Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia and my co-facilitator, Juan Cruz. To get us started, I'm going to introduce Jacinta, who is an organizer with Mi Gente.
Thank you so much for having us and for putting on this panel. As was said, my name is Jacinta Gonzalez, and I'm a senior campaign organizer with Mi Gente. Mi Gente, together with the We Are Home Coalition, has organized Eyes on ICE, Truth and Accountability Forums throughout the country, because we were really excited to hear that the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, announced that he's going to have an investigation into DHS's deportation and detention policies. But our experience tells us that DHS cannot investigate itself. Any review of DHS would be incomplete without the voices of the folks who have suffered directly at the hands of ICE and CBP, without the voices of people who have been inside of detention, and without the voices of organizers, advocates, and elected officials, such as Chuy Garcia, who have been at the forefront of fighting against criminalization, detention, and deportation. And so for us, it's been important to highlight many of the demands that the coalition has for the new secretary, including ending detention, having deportations stopped as well by offering people stays of removal, and also for making sure that any policies are not further criminalizing people or not punishing people, but actually deem everybody worthy of staying home with their loved ones. And continuing to push back against practices that are including Title 42, that is including deportations. Under the Biden administration, over 100,000 people have already been deported. And so it is more urgent than ever for us to lift up our collective voices to make sure that Secretary Mayorkas and President Biden take action. So we hope that today, all of the community leaders, all of the people who will be giving testimony, all of the elected officials will be united and actually pushing back to make sure that not because of contact with the police, not because of contact with any sort of part of the criminal legal system will justify someone's deportation, and that together we can push back on criminalization and detention. So thank you so much for organizing this forum. You know, it's one of many that are happening throughout the country. We will have our first national forum on deportations under Biden this Thursday, and hope to invite everyone to attend to that as well. We'll be talking more about the priorities and the different policy recommendations that we have later in the program, but I'll pass it back to our amazing facilitators for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacinta. As you have seen time and again, that building up people power is essential. We now have an opportunity to make transformational changes because we have organized and we have built power, and our organizing is winning. And so now, you know, with the wins that we've had, now we're pushing back. We're pushing back federally. We must continue to organize and build power to remove exclusionary bars in bills such as HR 6, which is the Dream and Promise Act. We must push back against harms caused by our immigration enforcement system. And this is especially important for Black immigrants who at the intersection of race and immigration are doubly impacted by both the immigration enforcement system and the criminal justice system. You heard Jacinta, you know, she gave us the number of the staggering number of deportations that have happened during, you know, the short time we've had the Biden administration, and how under Title 42 we've seen the dramatic increase in the pace of deportation, particularly of Haitian immigrants. And during this pandemic, the jail to deportation pipeline is proving deadly to many immigrants, particularly Black immigrants who fare particularly poorly in detention facilities. You know, as a step towards racial equity, President Biden instructed the Department of Justice to end contracts with private prisons. However, he left out private immigration detention centers, which house 80% of those detained. For Black immigrants, ICE and police are two sides of the same coin. And so we cannot move forward towards racial equity if we don't address the injustices of ICE. And now I'll invite my co-facilitator, Juan.
Thank you, Fasika. And you know, Fasika is exactly right. My name is Juan Cruz. I'm with Communities United. We're a community organization in Chicago that works across Chicago, and we have rooted our work in bridging our Black and Brown communities, centering our lived experience, right? And it's through these lived experiences and what we're gonna do today, right, that we believe that change happens, right? And that and through our collective efforts, right, we have been able to shift the conversations around criminal justice system and immigration. And we have also been, and we have been able to see some progress. And especially now, right, when it comes to pushing back against this pushing back against criminal bars, it is the organizing, right, and it is through the sharing of our lived experiences, we have been able to make change. And we have found allies in Congress, like Congressman Chuy Garcia, who have taken on our fight in Congress to push back against these criminal bars. And today we have Congressman Chuy Garcia here. And, you know, we want to welcome him, and you know, if he could speak to, you know, the importance and of the work that we are all engaged in right now.
Thank you so much, Juan and Fasika, and of course, everyone on the call. I see many friends and allies participating in this event today. And of course, a special thanks again to the We Are Home campaign, including Mi Gente and the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, for inviting me today. 2 weeks ago, the House took a first step in rewriting our immigration laws and establishing a fair and humane system. My vote for the Dream and Promise Act was for the countless young immigrants in my district who've been waiting in limbo for years and robbed of opportunities. This was a historic moment, decades in the making, and a testament to your tireless organizing and advocacy. But this vote also weighed heavy on me. We know that there are still many undocumented people who will not be protected under these bills. H.R. 6 is critical for millions, but it also contains deeply flawed provisions that perpetuate racial injustice. The harmful criminal bars will deny immigrant youth a better future. We are a country that believes in second chances. We need a bill that reflects that and that forgives people for their mistakes. We also need a bill that values the lives of immigrants, not just their labor. We constantly hear about immigrants' economic impact, but we are more than just our labor. Citizenship shouldn't just be for the valedictorians or those with prestigious degrees. The average student working 2 hours to make ends meet also deserves a fair chance at an American dream. That is why we need the new way forward and a roadmap to freedom resolution. These pieces of legislation recognize our humanity and the fundamental belief that all communities deserve dignity, restoration, and repair, and not further criminalization. This is not a radical concept. We're simply asking for a fair shot and the opportunity for immigrants to stay in the country they call home and that they contribute immensely to. It's no accident that the same communities that are over-policed due to racism and racial bias, and they're the same communities suffering at the hands of immigration enforcement. Being Black or brown makes you a target for police. Being Black or brown immigrant will then put you at risk for automatic deportation. Take a low-level crime like marijuana possession. If the immigration official has a reason to believe that you may have sold marijuana, that is enough to deport someone. The reality is that since 1996, one mistake, even if it's decades old, is enough to deport someone to a country that they barely know. Many Black and brown immigrants already served their sentence. Deporting them means punishing them twice. Just as the criminal justice reform movement seeks to end the harsh policies of the war on drugs, the movement for immigrant justice calls for drastic changes to the immigration system that will ensure due process for all. In the midst of racial reckoning, and as our country grapples honestly with its past, it's time that we disentangle local law enforcement from federal immigration enforcement. We can't do this critical work alone. Undoing Trump's harm on our communities requires the work from all of us. It will require strong leadership at all levels. Yes, we've inherited a broken system, but there are things in our control. The administration, for example, can use tools of prosecutorial discretion at its disposal and stop ongoing deportations on asylum seekers and families. And it's on all of us to continue pushing the administration to do the right things. We must organize our communities to stand with representatives at every level of government who are on the right side of history, who commit to promoting justice for all, who commit to ending policies that for decades have criminalized immigration. We must also recognize ourselves to change the dialogue about immigrants and reject legislation that perpetuates the narratives of the good versus the bad immigrant. Es hora de presentar una nueva visión para un sistema migratorio justo y compasivo, un sistema que no criminaliza la desesperación, un sistema que no arranca a los niños de sus padres, un sistema que trata a todos con la dignidad que se merecen. Es hora de que dejemos de criminalizar la desesperación en los Estados Unidos. Debemos poner fin a la práctica inhumana de la detención obligatoria, restaurar el debido proceso y la dignidad en nuestros tribunales de inmigración y reescribir nuestras leyes migratorias para que se basen en la justicia y también la compasión. We should be a welcoming country, not one that turns its backs on immigrants seeking refuge. I look forward to working with you all on fixing the wrongs and paving the way to a better future for immigrant communities. Thank you all for building momentum to decriminalize immigration and for committing to ensure that we keep our promises to advance our vision of full citizenship for all. Muchas gracias y buenas noches.
Thank you, Congressman Garcia. Thank you so much for your leadership. With us today, we also have, as I mentioned earlier, a couple of community leaders that are going to give us some testimonies. So I'm excited to announce the first of those speakers, a community leader from the United African Organization. I introduce to you Daniel.
Thank you, Fasika. I appreciate you, and thank you, Congressman Garcia. My name is Daniel. I recently graduated as a physician, and I'm also an immigrant based here in Chicago. To some of us, the advocacy in support of immigrant detainees in ICE custody is something that is just personal for me because I've lived through it, and it's a very sad memory for me. In 2017, while coming to Chicago for my clinical rotations, I had a valid visa, a paid tuition receipt, my hospital schedule proving I was coming here for my rotations. I was illegally taken into ICE custody at Kenosha County Jail. That was where I spent 6 months of my life, hoping I don't get deported for no just cause. And my jail experience was the height of inhumanity and misery, as I was never afforded the opportunity in incarceration to even let my family know my whereabouts. And as an African detainee, it's really we are part of a minority community because most of us do not have families here. And most of us who have been in detention are probably not afforded the opportunity to get legal representations. And without legal representations, you are given no choice than to be deported. I was very fortunate to be represented by National Immigrant Justice Center here in Chicago. And through them, I was able to be granted my release. And while in custody, I learned my mom was sick. And because of my sudden disappearance, for weeks, I sat down crying without knowing what to do. And my worst experience while in jail was being ill for months, and I was not taken to the hospital. ICE denied me the opportunity to be taken care of at the hospital facility. And even after, when my attorneys had to write them, and when I was taken to the hospital, I was taken to the hospital in handcuffs, both in my hand and my foot. And the doctors were not given an opportunity to properly take care of me. And in the jail, as Africans, most of us do not have the opportunity to fully understand English. And you are often punished for little or no offenses. And most times you are sent to segregation or what is called hole. I would like to emphasize more that the hole is just an inhumane cell where your privileges are taken away, no right to proper shower, no right to phone calls, even to your attorneys. And the jail system structured by ICE is structured in such a way that detainees are being tortured and being forced to either self-deport themselves or sign voluntary deportation. So today with the advocacy group, I'm hoping that this brings light to the inhumane treatment by ICE, and we hope that the government and President Biden will bring them to accountability and better restructuring for a more dignified approach to immigration and immigration benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. You know, the fact that it was difficult for you to access legal support while you were incarcerated is really alarming. Thank you for sharing your story. Next, I want to welcome another community leader, Ozzy Garcia from Access Living. Welcome, Ozzy.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ozzy Garcia. I am a leader with Access Living, and have lived in Chicago for most of my life. I came here when I was like under 2 years old. like many others, because of our broken immigration system. Despite this being my home, I am undocumented. I grew up in poverty and we struggled day to day. Like many struggling families from communities that lack resources and support, I grew up in rough conditions. I didn't have guidance or a network of support to steer me in the positive direction. When I was 19, I made some bad choices and some mistakes. As a result, I was convicted of theft and for tagging a high school building. Offenses that were misdemeanors, which in turn became a felony. I ended up serving my time here in Illinois. A week before I was due to be discharged, I received a letter from INS, ICE before it was called ICE. The letter said that I would be immediately detained after my release. I was trying to figure out what was going on because I already a legal permanent resident. I didn't get any answers. And once my discharge date came, I was detained by INS, first in Bridgeview, Illinois, and then in Racine, Wisconsin. In my time in Racine, I saw too much. I experienced abuse from officers and saw abuse of others detainees. They would throw our food on the floor. It was even worse if you couldn't speak English. These are things that made me realize I couldn't take it anymore. Regardless of their charges, some people were detained for up to 10 years. This was all after I already served my time in Illinois. It felt like I was being punished all over again. But this is all part of the experience that has turned my life around. When I was 21, I acquired a disability following a diving accident. 2 years later, I became involved as a leader with Access Living, working on disability rights and immigration issues. I am now 40, still very involved in Access Living and happily married and sharing my life with my partner, Michelle, and my community. Despite the label that is given to me, I am not defined by my mistakes. I am not undeserving of rights. I am a loving, caring human being that wants what is best for my community and my people. But in the eyes of the criminal justice and immigration system, this does not matter. Even after being punished twice, it still feels like I've been sentenced for life. I've lived in fear every day. I am even afraid to interact with police in any way. If they find my convictions and my status on record today, they could call ICE and rip me away from my family and the network of support and care I receive. This feeling and my experiences combined with the moment that we're in have motivated me to put my story out there. Part of me is scared to do it, but it's time for me to share this story. Deep down, I know that it'll change someone's mind, and that's a good thing. Now it's time for President Biden to make drastic changes and stop deportations. And here at the state level, we can continue to separate ICE from local law enforcement and provide legal services for immigrants in detention. This is the change that we need now, and to make sure that nobody else has to live through what I did. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ozzy. Juan, I will give the mic back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ozzy and Daniel, for sharing sharing your stories. It's always hard to hear, the atrocities, right, of, how our immigration system impacts the lives of our communities, right? And we know that, for too long, right, our communities have been the victims of, mass incarceration that has resulted in family separation, whether it's by the criminal justice system or by a deportation system, or both. Um, and while we have made progress, right, in moving some of elected officials and recognizing the harms of the criminal justice system and in its inherent racist roots, right, we still have some of those same elected officials that have made statements calling for racial justice, changes in the criminal justice system, at the same time championing immigration policies that include criminal bars based on those same inherently racist criminal laws that have led to mass incarceration of color. So, of our communities of color. So, and that's why we must decouple the criminal justice system from our immigration system. And we have Jacinta Gonzalez, who will now go over some of the demands that we have. So Jacinta.
Yes, thank you so much. And I just really want to thank folks for sharing their stories and their testimonies today. What you have shared has been incredibly powerful and really moving, and really shows what we already know, that the deportation and detention system that is operating in this country is profoundly unjust. It is harming our communities. It is drastically impacting people's lives in a negative way. And that's why we're calling on President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas to use all of the power that they have to actually shift these programs, right? We know that they actually have the ability to stop deportations. They have the ability to close down detention centers. They have the ability to ensure that no one else will suffer what y'all have already suffered through, and are bravely showing us why there is such a sense of urgency in our community to see action taken immediately. As a coalition and as Mi Gente, we've really been focusing on a couple of things that Secretary Mayorkas could be doing in his first 100 days in office. To begin, I just want to clarify that we have invited Secretary Mayorkas to come to a Truth and Accountability Forum on May 3rd to give us an accounting, right? To give us a report back on what has been done in the first 100 days and what are the plans for the agency moving forward. We know that in his first 100 days, a few of the things they could do is, for example, grant stays of removal to all individuals facing deportation, and actually conduct a full review of every person who's in detention to release them. We know there's around 15,000 people who are being detained right now, and those are 15,000 people that demand and deserve an accurate review of their case so that they can actually be released from detention to be able to fight their deportation. We also know that DHS could immediately start to close down detention centers and stop using state and local jails as well as private facilities to lock up and cage our loved ones. This is a promise, right, particularly around private detention, that was made on the campaign trail, and one that we actually expect to have complied with and actually have it be effective. We are also, as Ozzy so eloquently put, we need to stop fusing the policing system with the mass deportation system, right? We need to end programs like 287G, secure communities, ICE detainers inside of jails. These are all practices that could be immediately stopped to make sure that people are not suffering double punishment and that we're not allowing the racism and the injustice of the policing system continue to put people in deportation proceedings. We are also asking for them to actually adopt prosecutorial discretion guidelines that provide relief, not more punishment. Currently, Secretary Mayorkas has put out guidelines that actually allow for criminalization based off of any contact with the police that might mean an aggravated felony, any accusation of gang activity. We openly denounce these and say that they are not fair, they are not just, and we should not have guidelines that are actually making carve-outs for people and justifying people's criminalization and deportation. And finally, we also want to say that we want people to be allowed to seek asylum at the southern border, right? People should not be detained. People should not be turned away. Title 42, which is really this law or this rule that has been used to justify not letting people in because of a global pandemic, is actually making things worse and has led to over 100,000 deportations. Many of those deportation flights have been folks that are being deported to places like Haiti, right? Where we know that folks are not, able to be safely, and that the administration could very quickly grant TPS, right? To give people protections, not punishment. And so again, these are just many of the policy demands that are on the table that we know that with the stroke of a pen, right? Secretary Mayorkas, President Biden could actually dramatically improve people's lives, could change the frame from punishment to protection, and make sure that we actually have a system that actually celebrates immigrants for what they contribute to our communities, and not continues to really, fuse these two systems of policing, detention, and deportation together. So, if folks are interested in learning more about these policy demands, you can sign the petition. We're going to share it in the chat. But this is a petition that we are circulating precisely to ask them to take action on this. You can also, continue to follow Mi Gente, follow We Are Home, to put pressure on Secretary Mayorkas to come and face the communities, right, that are going to be impacted by the decisions that he is making in terms of the direction of the department. And we know also that this fight will go beyond the first 100 days. We know that no matter what happens, we're going to continue to unite, to organize, to fight back. So I invite people to plug in. If you're interested in becoming a Mi Gente member, become a Mi Gente member. Get connected with ICIRR. Get involved in your communities, because right now what we need is more people organizing to push in the right direction. We were able, through our organizing, to get the president to sign the moratorium on deportations in his first days in office, right? And we have to continue to make sure that that becomes a truth and a reality for every immigrant in this country. So please, unite, get together with us, continue to organize and push, and together we'll be able to stop deportations and detentions. So again, thank you so much for all of your powerful testimonies. If folks are interested, tomorrow there's actually going to be an action in DC where folks are going to be hand delivering this invitation to Mayorkas. So please follow us on that tomorrow, help amplify, make sure that people know that we're literally going to his doorstep to make sure he hears us. And on Thursday, again, we'll have our first national forum on deportations under Biden for folks that want more information on what's happening with Title 42 at the border and all of these deportations and current review process for people in detention. So continue to get plugged in. These are our demands. This is how you can take action. And I will pass it back over to you, Fazika and Juan. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Jacinta. That was an amazing, summary. We could talk much longer on what needs to be done, but I think you gave us some really good points that we should be pushing for. And so next, I believe we have our call to action.
Yep, I'll step in here. Thank you, Fazika and Jacinta. My name is Vero Castro. I'm with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, and I'm also a really proud Mi Gente member. And in 1 second, I think you're going to see a slide come up, and that will actually point out how you can take action for those of you watching us live. So, we heard some really powerful testimony today. And one very concrete way that we can make our voices heard is by signing the petition that Jacinta put out there as the call to action to push Mayorkas and to push Biden. Another way that we can do something locally is to support some of the bills that the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights is pushing at the state level. It's our way of really doing what we can to separate ICE from local police and ensure that immigrants facing deportation have access to representation. It really, underscores the importance of that in what we heard Daniel saying, right? Daniel's ability to be able to get out of detention really hinged on being able to have quality representation. And so by helping us support these bills, it will ensure that folks in Illinois will have access to good representation. So what you can be doing is asking your senator and representative to support the Illinois Way Forward Act and the Right to Counsel and Immigration Proceedings Act. So there should be a link in the chat that you can click on to go and do that. And I'm guessing that we don't have that slide up just yet, but hopefully we can get it out there, or we'll pass it around after this. And then again, just go ahead and do two actions. One is to sign on to Mi Gente's petition, and the second is to sign on to our push around New Way Forward and the Right to Counsel and Immigration Proceedings Act. So if you have a moment, do that right now. I'm gonna give everybody another 10 seconds to click those links, get it done. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort. Stay plugged in. We'll also be following up with you about any of the future actions or events that we'll have around this as well. And I'll pass it back to Fasika to help close us out. And yeah, we were having just some tech difficulties to get it up on the screen, but hopefully we'll share that after this. Thank you all. Oh, so we have a phone number. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Vero. Thank you everyone for joining us. We have all the links you will need in the chat. Please, sign the Mi Gente petition, engage with ICIRR around state level, push to get legal representations for immigrants facing deportation. It's critical that we continue this fight. And we know these truth and accountability forums are happening all over the country. You can join other sessions if you like. But we thank you all for joining us. We thank our speakers. Jacinta, thank you for being here. We thank Congressman Garcia. Thank you for our amazing community leaders, Daniel and Ozzy, and Juan, my co-host. Thank you so much for your support. And with that, we, encourage you to continue to engage with the actions we've mentioned. And I want to thank you for your time and have a good evening.